What's the most unethical parenting hack you know? I let the laundry build up and up, then, once a week, go to my bathroom with chocolate/snacks, a hot cup of tea and Netflix to fold the washing. I tell them anyone who comes in has to help. I don't see any of them the entire time. Story 2. Unethical childing hack. Raised Catholic, church every Sunday. So we'd time things and bring them breakfast in bed so that by the time they choked down burnt toast and soggy cornflakes, it was too late to make it to Mass. Worked best if you sent the youngest two in with the tray. Sometimes they were hung over enough, the very appearance of the tray prevented church. Years later, Mom and Dad would talk about how terrible those breakfasts were, but how it would have been mean to reject it. We didn't care if you liked it, we just didn't want to go to church. Story 3. When my son was a baby, dude cried like a banshee, and he cried a lot. I was the bath giver, and it was especially bad in there due to the small space. So I went on Amazon and got myself some noise-muffling earmuffs, like what you'd use on a gun range or something, and it made the crying so much less stressful and easy to deal with, so I could just focus on loving him without the noise grating my soul. Maybe not that unethical, but I've gotten negative reactions from people when I told them about it. Story 4. This may have worked better for me since one of the kids' parents has hearing loss, but I told my 4-at-the-time nephew that I couldn't hear whining, but if he would like to try again in a different tone of voice, I could understand him better. Right now I could see his lips move, but that was all. He did an admirable job with modulation after that, and I got him what he'd asked for. Story 5. I used to tell my son that screaming is just noise, but I can hear talking. Eventually said the same thing to my niece. She'd cry on cue. She was 6. When you scream, you're just making noise. If you talk to me, I can hear and understand you. It worked surprisingly well. Story 6. I got one. I foster difficult teen boys. Obviously, their home life wasn't great, and they imitate some bullcrap behavior. When I set boundaries they don't like, a lot of kids want to physically fight me because that's the way they've learned to solve problems. Okay, so here's the unethical part. If they want it, I am the one. We glove up and go to the backyard. I block and dodge until they're gassed. They cry out of frustration and we hug it out. I've gone to work with a shiner more than once, but the kids learn that no matter how bad you are, there's always someone badder. Tough guy crap don't make your problems go away, and physical contest makes you feel better. My kids have been thrown out of school, foster homes, alternative learning schools, every program they've ever been in. Having an outlet for that energy and anger helps, but it's not exactly ethical to tell a kid if they want it, they can come get it. Story 7. While 3 out of the 4 of us were independent readers from an early age, including my dyslexic sister, my brother struggled a lot when he was young and just overall had very little interest in reading, especially anything he had to read in school. So Dad bought Final Fantasy and other relatively text-heavy video games specifically to give my brother things to read that would hold his interest, and things that had a practical, to a small child, use to him, such as figuring out his equipment. I'm sure some would find that unethical, just putting a kid down in front of video games, but I sure as hell don't, especially because Dad also read fairly advanced fantasy novels to us every night to further ignite that interest. My brother eventually became an avid reader of fantasy novels. He knew if he wanted to get the story, he had to read it. A lot of kids pick up a second language that way too, watching subtitled foreign television and movies. Yeah, so I was just going to say, this is how I learned how to read and speak in other languages, was playing video games and watching dubs of cartoons and shows repeatedly in other languages. So that's not unethical. That's actually just brilliant. Story 8. Friend at school's parents told him he was allergic to alcohol, which they said they found out when he accidentally drank some as a toddler. They told him he was in intensive care and nearly died. On his 18th birthday, they told him they made it up so he didn't drink when underage. Story 9. I save all my tax office envelopes. They are a distinct color in the Netherlands, and every time I hear my child swear, he randomly gets a letter fining him X amount from the tax office. He then hands the money over, and I pop it back in his piggy bank when he's not looking. It works. Story 10. I pretended that certain foods, such as the skin on steamed salmon and broccoli, are incredibly delicious and would ask my kids if I could eat theirs. Other parents found it hilarious that my kids would be begging for slimy salmon skin and be delighted when I gave them cucumbers. Story 11. I'm not sure this qualifies as unethical, but my kids sure thought it did. When they were young, they had difficulty gaining weight. It wasn't that they weren't eating, their metabolisms were just too fast. One of the things the doctors recommended was giving them milkshakes every morning. This would pack in the calories, but we realized it would also fill them up so they wouldn't get some other nutrients, and especially any fiber. I began adding chocolate-flavored protein bars and frozen spinach. Turns out frozen spinach is close to flavorless. One morning, they caught me throwing the spinach into the blender and had a fit. I told them this was the first time I tried it and promised not to do it again. The next morning, I added it anyway, as well as some chocolate chips so they'd have a special treat as an apology. It was adorable having them come up to me and tell me it was the best milkshake I'd ever made, with tiny green bits of spinach in their teeth. By the way, they're in their 20s and are nearly a head taller than me and my wife. I just like to applaud the ability to have some quick thinking here when they caught you putting the spinach in, just saying, hey, it's my first time trying, I promise, I'll never do it again. And they're none the wiser. Good job. Story 12. Not exactly unethical, but one way my mom got child me to stop crying was to rapidly cover and uncover my mouth, kind of like how people used to imitate Native Americans back in the day. The resulting noise I made never failed to make me laugh hysterically and calm me down instantly. Mom's a real cheeky lady. Story 13. If you want your toddler to do something they don't really want to do, then ask them a question where all possible answers involve them doing the thing. For example, when my kid was in the bath, they never wanted to get out when bath time was over. So I just asked, do you want to climb out yourself or do you want me to lift you out? Worked every time. Story 14. If they lie to me, their tongue will turn purple. The hesitation when you ask them to show you their tongue if they've lied. Hack ruined when 3-year-old, youngest child, had them all sit in front of the mirror, tell lies, and check each other's tongues. Story 15. Not unethical, but I've been talking to my daughter about traffic laws and car safety since she was a baby. Mostly because I'm a single mom, and she would cry in the car when she couldn't see me. I got tired of trying to say the same calming words, and she got tired of hearing them, so I started to just narrate the drive. We're coming up to a stop now. I'm going to turn right, so I need to put on my turn signal. Here we go. Click, clack, click, clack. And, oh, that black car is driving so fast. The speed limit here is only 35 mph. This continued on throughout her life. Eventually, she started pointing out things. That truck in front of us doesn't have that furniture tied down properly. So make sure to stay far back and check your mirrors to make sure you have a clear escape route. Sometimes it gets annoying when she says stuff like, put on your turn signal, or there's a red light. And inside my head, I want to yell, I know, but I can't because I'm the one who created this backseat driving monster. And also, I have no worries about her getting her license in a few years because she's constantly vigilant and knows more about traffic laws than 99% of adults. Yeah, I think more parents should do this in general. You're preparing one less crazy driver that we have to worry about on the roads, and I think we can all appreciate that. Story 16. Just look at ads for children's medicine from the late 1800s to early 1900s to get the most unethical parenting tips imaginable. No matter what problem your kid had, there was some blend of opiates, cocaine, alcohol, cannabis, radium, and random plant extracts for sale guaranteed to fix them right up. Story 17. So I think everyone knows that don't react initially if they fall down or appear to hurt themselves in some way trick. Mine goes a step further. Act like they may have damaged the thing they hit. Kids love breaking stuff. I diffused a bedtime knock last night in which my son smacked his head against the bed guardrail. I immediately commented that he must have put a crack in the bed, pointing out that already present seam between two boards of the guardrail. He was proud that he was able to do it. Then, of course, I noted that he'll have to be more careful so he doesn't break his bed so that he wouldn't keep doing it. Got him from the verge of tears to grinning happily in 10 seconds flat. Story 18. Something that has only recently been pointed out to me as potentially unethical. Pulling your kid's loose baby teeth out. My husband was horrified when I told him my siblings and I never had loose teeth for long because once they were loose enough, one of my parents would just pull it the rest of the way out with their hands. Sure, it hurt, but the accidentally generous tooth fairy made up for it. I have 5 siblings, and my dad accidentally gave the oldest $20 one time, grabbed the wrong bill. Of course, she bragged about getting so much money for it, so subsequently all of our teeth were quite valuable. They did manage to logically explain the value down to $5 a tooth after your initial $20, but with 6 kids, it adds up, LMFAO. Story 19. You're meant to read to your baby often and from as early as possible to help with marriage development. But for a good 2 years, they won't understand what you're saying anyway, so instead of the same baby books over and over, I just scroll through Reddit reading posts out loud. So you're saying that I can get paid to do what I'm doing right now, to read to babies before bedtime, and it doesn't matter what we're talking about? Yes, sign me up, please. Story 20. It's okay to do little white lies to get your kid to listen. Sometimes explaining it the correct way still doesn't get through. For example, if your kid has a problem with mooning people, you can just tell them that they'll attract barking spiders that'll attack at the sight of said butt, and then boom, no more mooning. Story 21. I recently flew internationally with my toddler and had to keep him chill in the long security lines and customs lines. I would tell him if he didn't stay quiet, they wouldn't let him on the plane. And then once on the plane, if he started getting cranky, I'd tell him that he was too loud and they'd have to turn around and take him home. Made it through 12 hours total of flying with 10 minutes of crying, so I'm calling it a win. Story 22. My kid didn't sleep through the night for 14 months because of his allergies, so we were absolutely running on fumes. One night I came downstairs and said, I gave him his antihistamines, and my husband looked at me with pure horror and said, I gave him his antihistamines. We called the emergency line and they said no need to worry, he'd just sleep. And he went to bed and got 6 unbroken hours for the first time in so long, and it was bliss. The temptation to do it again, oh my god. We never did, of course, because we're not psychos. Story 23. When the batteries ran out or were lost on a particularly annoying toy, my mom would tell us, oh hon, I'm so sorry, but they don't make those kinds of batteries anymore. We would be disappointed and move on making our own noises for the thing, which was way more fun than the preset ones. Wasn't until I was much older, I won't say how old, that I realized batteries didn't change the kinds like fashion brands. Also, when we lived in Europe, the winters were a whole lot colder than we were used to. So once we had all piled into the car and were heading to church, of course, we'd complain about the cold despite car blankets and being bundled to high heaven. So my mom would tell us there was a light on the dash that would tell her when she would turn the hot air on. So we'd ask about the light. There is no light. She would just watch the engine temp until it was warm enough to pump hot air into the van. I was also much older than I'd like to say when that clicked. Story 24. Wow, I was just gonna say that changing the words to a song you lovingly sing to a crying baby into horrific historical tortures you can think of, that have to rhyme though, makes you take out your frustration in a way that doesn't hurt the baby. Sounds horrifying to new parents when you suggest it though. Story 23. My kid's goldfish died while we were on vacation, and I was prepared to have a lesson about the transience of life and that all things eventually perish. Daddy, where's Mr. Fishy? Well, Boogie, sees worried, almost tearful little eyes. On vacation! Know how you and I went on vacation? So did he, and we're going to pick him up right now. Drives to pet shop. Boogie, I don't see Mr. Fishy anywhere. Do you? Daddy, he's right there. I can't believe I missed him. Why don't you check out some of the other stuff, and I'll pay his room and board at the cashier. Story 24. I use this as a camp counselor all the time. Kid fell down? Have some water. It'll make you feel better. Once they stop crying to drink, they're less likely to start again. And at an outdoor summer camp, it was never a bad thing to get them drinking more water. Related, we also gave kids magic mints, Mentos, whenever they said they had a stomachache. The mint can help settle an upset stomach, and 9 times out of 10, the kiddos were just homesick and needed a few minutes to calm down with an adult. Same thing with M&Ms and minor injuries. If the chocolate distracts a kid enough to forget their hurt, they'll be fine. If they keep sobbing through a mouthful of M&Ms, you might have an actual problem. Giving kids candy to get them to quiet down and forget their hurt isn't unethical if it works. Story 25. Not sure how unethical it is, but here we go. I have 2 older siblings. My parents didn't know the best way for them to help my oldest sibling how to read. My other sibling, middle child, they did the Smarty game. Smarties are a type of sweet, by the way. Every time they got a flashcard word right, they got given a Smartie. For me, though, every time I got a word right, all 3 of us would get a Smartie. So my siblings used to chase me around the house just before the game with the flashcards, making sure I knew what the flashcard said because they wanted the sweets. It doesn't have to be Smarties, or other sweet for that matter, but the bribery worked well, it seems. Story 26. I do that with alcohol. My kids, 3 and 6, know alcohol is bad and only for adults. So when I buy myself something like a piece of cake only for me, I tell them, you can't have this, it's with alcohol. The downside? Just yesterday, my daughter, 3, and I were in the city and she was thirsty, asking if I could buy her something to drink. I said yes, and I'll buy myself something too. She said way too loud, "But not again, alcohol." People looked at me like I'm a monster. Story 27. My partner and I have a shared photo album of the kids' lists. Basically, they ask for something and we ask if they want it on their list. We take a photo of them holding it and it gets put in the album. It's great for Christmas and birthdays because we have photos of the exact thing they wanted. Sometimes their faces fall when we ask if they want it on their list. That's when we know whether it was a fleeting interest or if they're serious about wanting it soon. Story 28. If Toddler is having a major tantrum about something, take away their soother. Then they'll have a tantrum about wanting their soother. Then give it back and they stop crying. It's like switching them off and on. I would avoid doing it though. Okay, so this is just straight up sorcery. Why did I never think of that? That's brilliant, and I can see exactly how it works. Give them the old bait and switch. Story 29. My daughter loves medicine, like children's Tylenol, amoxicillin, etc. She loves to take medicine. She used to ask me for medicine all the time. If her sister was sick, she was always right there waiting for her dose of medicine. Well, it got to the point that she was asking for medicine when she was completely healthy too. Obviously, I can't dope my kid up with medicine 24/7 because she enjoys the taste. So I told her that medicine only tastes good when you're sick because it's meant to help you. When you're healthy and you take medicine you're not meant to take, it tastes bitter and will make you sick because you're not supposed to be taking it. So I gave her a tiny dose of apple cider vinegar instead of Tylenol when she kept asking when she wasn't sick. She doesn't ask for it unless she's sick now because it tasted so bitter when she felt fine, and it tasted much better when she didn't feel good. Story 30. When my youngest niece was tiny, she used to be an insomniac. Couldn't sleep for anything, but when I pick her up, walk with her, go about my day with a sleeping 1-year-old on my chest, then one day I was at work and it was my nap time for the little one. Her mom calls me. She won't sleep. What do I do? When I told her to find some heartbeat sounds, kiddo dropped right to slumber. So did everyone else. Moral of the story, heartbeat sounds make everyone sleepy. Story 31. My mom used to take me to my grandparents' house when my brother and I were playing up. My grandpa would give me plastic scissors and tell me it's my turn to cut the lawn, and my brother a brush and a bucket of water. Tell him he needs to paint the fence, but if it dries, the paint doesn't work, so start again. We would be out there hours. One time he asked us to dig a hole in his garden for a tree. Came out an hour and a half later to tell us it's in the wrong place and we needed to move the hole. To be frank, it gave my mom the break she needed and kept us out of trouble. Story 32. Telling your child that an old man is watching their every move, and in order to get gifts, they have to be good. And if they're bad, then they won't get any presents at Christmas. And also, the guy who Christmas is about is watching them, and if they don't follow his rules, they'll be burned in hell for all eternity. Also, we have a nanny cam set up in your room, and if we see you're being naughty, you'll be punished. Oh, and the government is watching you too, all the time. They can basically read your mind. Story 33. Oh, my mom was full of unethical parenting. I think that's the only kind of parenting she knew how to do. Her least ethical thing, though, was probably the one where she'd go have a nap and tell me to wake her up at a certain time, and then come up screaming and swinging any time I woke her up, but then also yell at me if I didn't wake her up, but then also yell at me if I woke her up by throwing something at her or poking her with the broom or yelling or anything else I could do at a safe, non-punchable distance. I tell you, it takes talent to make a child terrified of the concept of someone else being asleep, but goddamn, she did it. Story 34. I don't have kids, but the best hack I've heard is to play the New Year's Eve countdown from a country in a different time zone. Doesn't matter if it's a different language, kids don't care. They get fireworks, a countdown, and get to stay up late, but they're actually in bed by 9 p.m. Story 35. My grandmother used to go around the house with a needle when my mom was like 2 years old, and every time she or her brothers and sisters tried to touch an electrical outlet, my grandma would sting them with the needle fast so they linked the outlet to a hurtful experience. None of the kids would go near an electrical outlet again. It worked like a charm the first day they discovered the outlets. They would never try to touch them. Story 36. This is a really old school but interesting parenting concept my great-grandmother told me. Growing up, she was the oldest of 2 siblings in an immigrated Italian family. Every night, at the end of dinner, her dad would pour all the kids a shot glass of wine. None of the kids grew up to abuse alcohol because drinking small amounts in moderation was instilled in them since childhood. Obviously, this is considered unethical today, but for 1920 standards, it's pretty genius in my opinion. You know, I'm not saying that I'm in favor of this by any means, but I do wonder, at what point in human history were humans like, you know what, alcohol, wine, it should only be for adults. Surely when it was first conceived, invented, whatever, everybody was drinking it. So, it's at what point where it's yeah, you got to be 16, 17, 18 years old to drink this stuff. Just a thought. Story 37. Our youngest son co-slept with his mother and I till he was 5. Easily the dumbest thing we ever did. Trying to wean him off of that put his life and our sanity in danger. Hours a night were spent trying to get that little devil to fall asleep. My wife introduced him to Sleep Fairy, a lot like the Tooth Fairy, only Sleep Fairy helps little boys and girls sleep in their own bed. She found a small wooden treasure box, helped him paint and decorate it, and told him every night he sleeps in his own bed, the Sleep Fairy will give him a gift. Sleep Fairy left little Lego people, small candies, and other small toys and treats for a month. It got to where he looked forward to sleeping in his own bed. After a month, the Sleep Fairy wrote a heartfelt message to the boy, letting him know how proud of him they were, and it was time for her to go and help other little boys and girls sleep in their beds. Son is now 14, and he still has the Sleep Fairy treasure box in his room that he never effing leaves. Story 38. Not parenting hack, but definitely unethical. I used to babysit my brother since I was the oldest daughter. My youngest brother was a hellion with extreme ADHD. It was always a challenge for whomever was watching him. He's a great and smart adult now, but I would always have the easiest time. I would tell him to do something and he would eagerly jump to complete whatever it was. One day, my mom asked me why he listened to me so well. I had told him that there were monsters that lived in the closet, the Chihuahuas, and if he was bad, he would come and take him away. It only took a couple of fake growls and slight convincing, and he became the poster child for perfect behavior. I'm not proud of what I did, but man, it really worked. Story 39. My kid was very honest, well-mannered, etc. Never had to use tricks on him to get him to behave. My stepmonsters, though, were inveterate liars. Finally, I'd had enough and told them that if they lie, their poop will turn green and they'd get very, very sick. For the next 2 weeks, they got grape Kool-Aid for every drink with the expected results. They stopped lying. P.S. My kid was in on that and he thought it was effing hysterical, especially when the kids went to him and asked about it after the results. Of course, being the little evil bastard that he was, he played right along in telling them about how bad their tummies are going to hurt, and they'd be so sick and wouldn't even be able to watch TV because it was that painful. Story 40. Not unethical, but advantages to everyone. From the time they were a year or so, I would always knock on their doors if I wanted to go in their bedroom. Always. Turns out they'd do as they see. They always knock on our doors before they come in. Gives us valuable time to cover our naked arse in bedclothes. Story 41. I was told that parents of kids who go to daycare give their kid Tylenol or Advil before daycare if they have a fever, to buy themselves half workday. I've never done this myself, but apparently it's a thing. Story 42. On days my 4-year-old desperately needs a nap, I pack everyone in the car and challenge her to the closed eyes game with her twin little sisters. Whoever can close their eyes the longest gets fries. Once everyone is asleep, I put my car in park and read my Kindle. 45 minutes later, I've wasted some gas, but everyone got a decent nap and I got to quietly read. And then we all go get a couple of large fries to share. Story 43. I told my kids that all the kids' TV presenters take a holiday over the same 3-week period, so there is no CBeebies or other kids' TV on. That meant we would watch 3 weeks of uninterrupted Tour de France coverage. When the tour was over, the presenters came back from their holiday. Worked like a charm. Story 44. When my daughter still believed in Santa Claus, I would pretend to call or text Santa when she misbehaved. I even had Alexa call Santa once because she thought I was bluffing, and Alexa did try to call him. LMAO. I had no idea Alexa could even do that. Alexa's actually pretty brilliant. I found out, she can do Harry Potter spells and memorize your pizza order and all kinds of crazy stuff. Technology is just off the chain. Story 45. My mom did this and I'll never do it with my kid. Buying them big ticket items to be used as a control device. Here's the latest gaming console. If you cough funny, you lose it for a month. After 2 to 3 items like this, I just stopped thinking I had it. Be home by 5, got home at 5:02 with a very valid reason why I was late. No such and such for 2 weeks. My sister is 2 years older than me. Parents got her a beater car when she turned 16. Just shy of 2 years in high school with the car. Think she used it about 12 times in the whole 2 years. Crap like shutting the front door too loud would get it taken for a week. When I turned 16, they tried the same crap and told them to keep the car. Story 46. I had a coworker tell me this, and she was one of the nicest people I knew, which made it even funnier. Her parents told her growing up that the sugar packets at the table at restaurants were for dessert, but only good children were allowed to have them. I'm still laughing about that, and I haven't worked with her in like 8 years. Story 47. Told my nephew, 6, that the grape juice he was drinking was home-brewed super wine that would make him drunk with one sip. He chugged the entire thing, then promptly began acting so drunk that he just went to his room and fell asleep. Kids were walking placebo effects. Story 48. When the kids are little and start inquiring about adult drinks, offer to let them smell the bottle while you make it. Most kids will recoil at the smell. Then you tell them that your taste buds change around the age of 21 and it makes alcohol taste better. Before then, it tastes like poison and makes you really sick. Story 49. Telling kids that Easter baskets, etc. in the store are not really for sale. It's just for show. Still use it with the teens. Also, hiding change for dollars in a messy room and telling kids to clean the room. It's like a treasure hunt. Story 50. I think it was on Reddit, where grandma drugged her grandchild with a sleeping medication the night before and then tried to drop the kid off at a daycare. The daycare's policy was to wake up sleeping children, and the grandma got super squirrely about not waking the kid up. Turns out she was dosing the kid because she didn't want to deal with them being so rambunctious, and she knew she overdid it. When they couldn't wake the kid up, they called emergency services and the parents. The kid was fine, but I think she was giving them actual cold medicine for adults and just having the serving or something. Turns out, Grandma was on thin ice already, and she just pretty much nailed her coffin shut on having any kind of relationship with her daughter and her family. Story 51. When me and my little sister were very young, we saw a huge bird circling the skies above our backyard. We ran inside and told our dad that we saw a vulture. We live in Norfolk, Virginia. It was just a big crow. He told us if we laid real all and quiet like we were dead, it would land close to us and we would be able to catch it. And if we caught it, we could keep it as a pet. We laid in the middle of the yard for hours whispering to each other while he sat inside drinking beer and watching football. Well played, Dad. Story 52. If you don't want to go into a store with your little kids, tell them that it's closed for kids at that age. My kids would want to go to the Disney store, and being in there sometimes it's just overwhelming for me. I used to tell them that it was closed for 2-year-olds so the older kids could get their turn in the store. Story 53. The not a parent, but I've worked with kids for 26 years. I usually don't condone lying to kids, but sometimes bending the truth is necessary. One night of childcare, it was storming, and my little one was scared of the thunder. So, in a moment of desperation, I told her that thunder is the rain farting. She thought it was hilarious and wasn't afraid of thunder after that. I think I might steal that one. Copy it. Copyright. I'm infringing on that copyright. Thunder is just the rain ripping a loud, gross fart. Love it. Story 54. I know of a guy who used the mother of all unethical, also dangerous parenting hacks. He stole a batch of sleeping pills from his wife's workplace, a clinic, and he fed them to his kids to keep them quiet. This went on for several weeks until his wife discovered it. I heard that she had him reported and divorced. Story 55. Schedule your shopping pickup for 2+ hours after you have fun doing something or for yourself on your own. My kid and partner would rather pick lint off the carpet than go with me. Okay, I hope there isn't a line, and I can get my stuff quickly. You already purchased it, and it's waiting for you, and you're ready for it. Have a fun day of bookstores, coffees, movies, and nails. Story 56. My son would not hold my hand in a parking lot when he was about 3, so I told him the little black oil spots were kids who let go of their parents' hand. He held my hand after that. On a funny note, we were laughing about it not too long ago. He's 14 now, and he said, I still find myself looking at oil spots in parking lots and thinking, geez, that must have been a small kid, fat kid, tall kid. Oh, here's twins. That kid must have been running, kind of like making shapes out of clouds. Story 57. Only very mildly unethical. When I was a kid, my dad made a bet with me that he could spot police cars before I could. If I saw one before he did, he paid me a quarter. I was 16 before I realized he was paying me to keep a lookout for speed traps. Story 58. Want some peace and quiet at the beach? Tell your kids that if they throw sand on a seagull's back, it will follow them home. Cue your kid spending hours running around chasing seagulls. Dad, it's not following me. You must have just missed. Keep trying. Story 59. I had a tracker and disabling device put in both my kids' cars so they wouldn't sneak out at night, and I'd always know where they were. I gave my son, the worst of the two, enough rope to hang himself and shut down his truck in the middle of nowhere multiple times. Story 60. As a kid, my mom, a single mother, taught me how to pee. I was always scared of the toilet, so she taught me how to go pee outside next to a tree as we lived in the middle of nowhere, and I thought it was the greatest thing that I could pee where I wanted. Well, I didn't understand that I couldn't just go pee in the Walmart parking lot in the middle of the road down the drain. It became a problem because I wouldn't go to the bathroom. I just went where I wanted to in public. So my mom's solution was informing me of the Winky police. If caught, I would be taken to jail and they would cut it off. After she told me that, it never happened again. Story 61. My daughter isn't a big reader, and I'd like her to be, so this summer I offered her a penny a page for reading. She also earns extra screen time. I told her there's no limit, meaning that if she reads 100,000 pages, I will absolutely give her $1,000. So far, I'm in for about $7, and a lot of satisfaction seeing my daughter starting to like reading. Story 62. Until they can tell time, little kids have no concept of how long minutes or hours are. When it was getting time to leave the park or wherever, I would always ask them how much longer they wanted to stay. Whatever their answer, I would say okay and set my timer. 5 minutes later and the timer goes off, so they hear the bell and they know their 2 hours are up and it's time to leave. Story 63. I critique tantrums. You call that a tantrum? You're not even flailing your arms. Stomp with the bottom of your feet. It makes more noise and is less likely to hurt your feet. You need to roll back and forth. No, with more energy. Your grandma taught me. Do I need to get her to show you how to have a proper tantrum? Because this is sad. Story 64. My son was 2 weeks shy of 5 years of age and was acting up a lot. I finally told him that I would not allow him to turn 5 because he was acting like a 4-year-old. We had this conversation a number of times with him crying. No, Mommy, I don't want to be 4 anymore. My response was always the same. I need to see 5-year-old behavior before I will allow you to be 5. We still laugh about it today. Story 65. We waited until each kid found their favorite stuffed animal, the one they cannot sleep without. We then went out and bought 2 more identical stuffed animals and rotated them each week. That way, when one got lost or left behind, we could pop out another one that was equally well worn and claim that the stuffed animal somehow made it home. We saved lots of tears. Story 66. Hospital is closed on the weekend, so they cannot be getting hurt. Obviously, if someone was truly hurt, we would take them, but luckily in the years mine were young enough to believe this, nobody did. Funny, they're all tween, teen, or early 20s now and repeat it to each other when they see someone doing something stupid, lol. Story 67. My friend would tell her kid if she didn't stop whatever, that she was, quote, going to call the lady. There was no lady. For years, her kid was afraid of making her call the lady. One day shopping, the kid was being a bit bratty, and some lady shopper looked at her and she straightened up. She then whispered that she thought she saw the lady. Worked for a few years, and my friend never did have to call the lady. Story 68. 1. The cleanup song. 2. If a child asks you a question and isn't happy with your answer or keeps prodding, ask them the question back. They'll tell you what they wanted to hear. Does he bite? No, he's friendly. Oh, does he bite though? I don't know. Does he bite? Only if you tease him. Ah, okay. Story 69. Learned this from my mom, who had 4 kids of her own, 5 grandchildren, and countless cousins. Rope candy at the ready. If anyone is having a bad moment, argument, sad, too loud, bored, in your hair and you need 5 minutes, in the house and you don't want them to be, etc., give them a bit and change up what's going on in their brain. Engage with them while they're eating it if you want/need to teach. I was totally against this until I saw it work in person. Story 70. I told my kids I could see through walls, so when they were jumping on their beds or destroying something by making more noise than humanly possible, I could yell, "Stop doing that," and they believed I could see them doing it through the walls. When they were teenagers, their baby cousins moved in with us for a while. They were 7, 2, and 3. I caught my teenage daughters telling them how they shouldn't jump on their beds because I could see through walls. Story 71. I told my kids that the blue Smarties, UK Smarties, were poisonous. There was a thing at the time that the coloring was mildly toxic or something. So give them to Mummy so you don't have to eat them. This gradually turned into the mummy tax, which was paid on Smarties, Easter eggs, Halloween, and Christmas treats. Don't judge me. I like sweeties, and I was giving a valuable lesson on how the world works. I also told them the ice cream van only plays music when it runs out of ice cream. Story 72. My mom's PhD dissertation boils down essentially to being an emotionally toxic and abusive parent in certain very specific ways greatly increase the likelihood of your kid growing up to be both an intellectual and creative genius. And she dedicated the book to me. And I've never read more than 20 pages at a time because it's chilling to read some of the things you're supposed to do to your kid, and I remember getting into a fight with her about that. And the next page has another that, and after a few of those, I'm way too spooked to continue. I wonder if she always meant me as a science project, or if she's just after the fact trying to rationalize her worst decisions as Mensa seeds. Story 73. When mine was 2, I bought a ton of candy and put it in bowls in reachable places around the house. The kid loved it, but she had to earn fruits and veggie snacks. After a while, she would start picking up her toys to earn grapes, strawberries, and apples. It was absolute hell for 2 weeks. Now my kid goes to kids' birthdays, friends, family houses, and actively seeks out fruits and veggies. A little reverse psychology, and my kid, 7, orders salads when we go out and eats the healthiest of any of her counterparts. Story 74. I don't know that I would consider it unethical, but I'm a new nanny for 6 and 4-year-old siblings. When they get too rowdy for me, I tell them that I'd love to see how fast they can run 5 laps around the house, and I'll time them to see if they did it faster than last time. I never time them. They never ask to see it. I just say, good job, that was so fast, so we can settle down and get back to what we were doing. Story 75. This sounds terrible. It probably is terrible. Here goes. My daughter's father died when she was 12. She started hallucinating due to the stress. I had her in therapy and we were exploring medications and everything. One of her hallucinations was a boy her own age that was very nice to her. He always told her she was beautiful, said all the nice things, etc. His name was Jake. Being a teen, she never wanted to do her homework. I would say out loud, "Jake, make sure she gets her homework done, please." Her hallucination would pester her with nice words until she did her homework. She's now 25 and no longer hallucinates. I hope I didn't mess her up too much. Story 76. When he was 2 or 3, to make my son eat his vegetables, I would tell him not to eat them because I wanted him to be my little baby forever, but the vegetables would make him grow big and strong. I said I wanted to fit him in my pocket so I could take him everywhere with me. I pretended to try and stop him when he ate them. He was squealing with delight as he stuffed his face with broccoli. To make him hurry up on the morning before daycare, I would say, "Really, take your time. It's not a race. There's no point in trying to win," and I would run to my room to get dressed as fast as I could, while saying, "Take your time. It's not a race, but I'm going to win." He would run to get dressed as fast as possible, half laughing and half terrified that I might win. When he was due for his shots, when he was 4 or 5, we were waiting for the pediatrician in the examination room, and I could see he was very anxious. I told him he's been selected for the same secret program as Steve Rogers, but it was a secret. So when the doc walked in, I very seriously asked him to make sure it was the Captain America formulation and not the Hulk formulation. The confused doc just said, "Huh? Whatever," and gave him the shot. He did cry a little, but 5 minutes later, in the car on the way home, he says, "Mommy, I think it's working. It barely hurts anymore, and my arm looks more muscular."